Welcome back, everyone, to Your Purposeful Life, and I'm your host, Adrian Starks. Today's topic: what are we getting wrong about Gen Z? Maybe you're Gen Z right now and you're finding life a bit frustrating and intimidating. Or maybe you have a Gen Z child at home and you're not connecting with them, or maybe it's a student. Today's guest is Sarah Deacon, and she's going to talk about building our confidence to suck at new things, releasing fears and outdated beliefs, and to have fun by playing with our passions to adult successfully. Sarah is the adulting coach, empowering young adults to play in their passions and own their future like a boss. She's a compassionate mentor, an articulate speaker, creative, and martial artist. We're going to get into that a little later, too. Parent and entrepreneur. What hasn't she done, actually? Sarah, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Adrian. It's so good to be here.
It's great to have you here. Let's get right into this here. I'm very happy to have you on to talk about this disconnect we have with the younger generation. What do most people get wrong about Gen Z?
Well, I've heard a lot of people complaining that Gen Z is lazy or directionless.
Mm,
And while the behaviors might indicate that that's a valid story, what's really going on is that they are overwhelmed and anxious, and they really do want to make something of themselves. They want to make an impact. They want to be their best selves. They just don't always know how.
that's true. They don't always know how, and I like how you brought that up because it's the first thing we think is they. Here's some of the things I've heard. They're entitled. They feel
Mhm.
entitled. They don't know how to work hard. They want everything
Mhm.
easy. They want the shortcuts to everything. And I believe that we're living in this world where things are different now. Like you and I, we come from a different generation. The thing now, I'm considered to be a millennial, so I'm on the
I'm
tail
a
end of
Gen X.
the Gen X, right? So we came from that era where everything was
Mhm.
changing at once, and we kind of was able to be guided through those changes. Like for instance, for me, I was in the era of cassettes, and then it went to CDs, and then it went to DVD players, and it went to MP3s. So we kind of slowly got guided by society into changes. Whereas now things are very different. I was doing some research, and I was shocked to hear this, Sarah, that the generation Gen Z, they take up more than one quarter of America's population, making them larger than baby boomers and millennials. So when we
Ooh,
talk
that's
about
cool.
that, that's a huge number, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much going on with this generation. What do you find is a reoccurring concern with this generation right now?
One of the big things is mental health. They
Mm,
are beautifully aware that mental health is important, and the support they're getting is not up to the standards they need. So they're really aware of this. And a lot of us adults too, we're really aware that there's a mental health crisis. Teen suicide is
mm,
on the rise, and it's affecting kids you wouldn't expect. So there's this underlying anxiety in these kids, these young adults who are feeling a lot of pressure. And sometimes, honestly, it's pressure they're putting on themselves, but they haven't been equipped with the tools to regulate it, to handle pressure, whether it's from their own selves or from other sources, jobs, school, whatever it might be. So there's this simmering anxiety, and I had a young man tell me they grew up hearing about 9/11, 9/11. Terrorists can strike at any time. 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. So it's like even before COVID, which is a whole other thing they've been dealing with, even before then, it's 9/11, it's school shootings, it's like all of these things that have blown up in the news. They've just been peppered and inundated with it their whole lives.
mm.
I mean, my son was born in 2007, so well after 9/11. But again,
Mm.
it's in the history, it's in recent history. It's not that far gone from where they are. And then again, the school shootings and the divisive news, politics, all of the things. They are looking for identity, purpose, belonging in this crazy mixed up world that most adults are not handling well, let's be honest.
That is true.
So what
Yeah.
are they supposed to do? How
Mm.
are they supposed to be acting?
That is true because even as adults, we are the same way. We're trying to figure ourselves out along this fiasco of multiple changes and unpredictable outcomes that are happening. And you brought up a great point. They are coming in an era where they're just brought into this. There's just so much that they can't control that is
Hmm.
happening that's in their face. And I like to add too that social media
Yeah.
is an or accessible point that they have that we didn't have
Hmm.
growing up. And so they have
Whole other conversation.
a whole other conversation that we'll have to have,
Yeah.
but they have more of a finger touch away of what's going on around the world versus
Hmm.
we had to sit down, watch the news, or hear it from our
Right.
adult peers, whereas everything is different now. And I find that that's, like you said, a big problem. What brought you into this work? I mean, this purpose that you're doing now, working with young adults to help them play in their passions and own their future like a boss. Was there something that got you into this work? Is something you always wanted to do? How did this happen for you?
Well, I will be honest, Adrian, I never wanted to work with teenagers.
Well, why is
Never
that?
did.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, let's be real. Like a lot of adults, their kid, even if they're parents of teenagers, they're like, "Oh my gosh, they're teenagers now, tearing their hair out. Like, what do I do?" Like, we just have this bias against the teenagers. Oh, they're
Hmm.
hormonal. They're full of like angst, and they don't want anybody's help, and they think they know all So there is definitely a resistance, and there was with me. And as I stepped into my coaching career, more and more often I heard people say to me and ask me, like, do you work with teenagers? Because they need help. They need people on their side. They need people to believe in themselves, to
Hmm.
help them believe in themselves because they're struggling. The last couple years, especially, a lot of things got taken away. And especially what you mentioned, they feel this lack of control. There's so many opportunities and options and ways to get information, ways to learn new things that sometimes it's just too much. So they don't do anything, which again ends up looking like they're lazy or entitled or whatever the story we tell about them is. So the more people asked me, "Hey, do you work with teenagers? I have this student group or I have this young person in my life. They're really struggling and I never thought of coaching for them because they don't want to go to therapy." And again, mental health is a bigger conversation now than it used to be, and there's still some resistance to therapy with kids who might not feel like they have it that bad that they need to go to therapy. There's
Hmm.
also therapists are not taking new patients a lot of the times. They're waiting like 6 months to a year before being able to be seen in therapy
Oh
sometimes,
wow, I didn't know that.
depending on where they're at or what kind of, insurance coverage, all of that stuff.
Hmm.
Um so yeah, as I stepped into coaching and heard more and more about not just the people I was talking to, but their kids or their students or the teenagers they knew needing help and hearing what I was doing for my adult clients, helping them with balance, taking control of their lives, facing fears, things like that. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what about teenagers? Do you work with them?" And I said, "Well, I don't see why not. It's all the same thing. We're all dealing with the same things. Yes, the teens, the young adults, they have a different perspective because they've grown up in this social media, this technology that we didn't, but their concerns are the same. They're afraid. They're looking for autonomy. They're looking for control in their lives. They're looking for ways to deal with what comes at them that's out of their control. And that's something, again, at each level we all need to take a look at and get support in, whether it's from peers, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a parent, a friend's parent, whoever it is. We all need each other to help get us through.
What are some of the challenges, or what is a common challenge you find that parents have connecting to their teenager, their Gen Z counterpart?
Yeah, I think kind of like what you started saying in the beginning, the stereotypes that they have. Oh, they just want to be in their room all the time. They don't They don't want to do anything. They don't want to get up off the couch. They don't want to get off their phone. They're not engaged in the world. So parents have this worry that when their kid spends all day on video games, they're not doing anything with their life. They're wasting time. When you really look at it, though, from the kid's perspective, or the adult, young adult, whoever it is, they might be going to that video game because, hey, their friends are online gaming with them. And so they are talking with friends. They're working at something side by side. They're collaborating on a team for a mission. So they're actually developing skills. It's just in a different way than what we did and what we might even see or be aware of, because they're like us. They have their headphones on. They're like focused on their screen, right? Like, so we don't always see those skills that they are building: the leadership, the collaboration, the creative problem solving, those kinds of things. So if I were to invite parents to find those doorways to connection, what it might look like is asking, hey, what is that game? Who are you playing with? Are you like, is it a mission style, or is it an open world, or, learning a little bit about their world? Because
What if
I
they
know
get the
I didn't
rolling of
know anything.
Well, what if they get the rolling of the eyes? You know, the teenagers, they're like, oh my goodness, why are you in my room?
Right.
So what happens if they get that response?
You know what? Be okay with it. Be okay with the rolling of the eyes, because it's not personal. They actually do really want you as part of their world. They want you present. They want you to be there in a non-threatening way. And that's why I say, ask questions, be curious. Hey, I never played a game like this before. Because a lot of millennials, Gen X parents, like, we've played video games. Like, we know. I've been beating my kids at Dr. Mario lately because we have this little Game Boy.
That's my game. Super Mario
Right?
3 was my favorite one. Super
Yeah,
Mario
Dr.
3.
Mario's the one like Tetris with the little pills that killed the little bugs. Yeah. But I like, they pulled out this game and like they're doing okay. They're getting to level like 1 or 2, and I'm like, all right, let me try. And I'm getting to level like 8, 9, 15, I'm just killing it. But like, that's the games I grew up with. I don't know anything about like Fortnite or Dark Souls or whatever else is on the, on the kids' radars right now. So I ask questions, because most of the time, especially with older teenagers, the interactions they have with parents are, is your homework done? How are your grades?
Yeah.
Like, did you do your chores? Like, it's the micromanaging of the, the activities they need to get. It feels
like imprisonment,
done.
Right? Like
Right.
they're
It's
in some kind of facility. They're being told what to do and forced.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's, for the parents listening, it's not prison. I'm not saying it's prison, but that's how they feel,
Right. It's not at all. It's coming from a place of concern. It's, you need to know the information that they have, if you need to sign a field trip permission slip, or if you need to talk to them about their missing homework or their grades slipping or whatever it is. The invitation is to make sure and be intentional, spending time not talking about that stuff, so that when you do have to talk about that stuff, you can be like, look, I have to talk about this with you. What's going on? And have that consistent pattern of curiosity, so that it doesn't feel as confrontational. It will always feel confrontational to the kids. Like, it will just, and they'll push back, and they won't want to have those tough conversations. Again, checking your own energy and being like, I'm curious about this. The grades are slipping. That's not like you. Can you tell me more? Instead of coming in saying, you need to do your work. You should be doing X, Y, and Z, and you've got to do that right now. And coming in the controller in the situation, where they really are wanting the control. They want the agency to make their own choices. But explaining things like, well, if you make this choice, here is a potential consequence, because they can't think through to the consequences. Their brains just aren't developed to think long-term consequences to some of their choices. So that's where we come in as parents, as guides, as mentors. So, and it's just maintaining that curiosity where if they do roll their eyes or if they do get really angry, I have boys, they blow up, they are angry. If they do get angry, not taking it personally, it can feel so personal as a parent. It can feel really, really personal, especially if they don't want to talk to you. And that's, again, another reason why I do what I do, is because it's another adult who cares, who's going to pour into them, who's going to see them, and who's not in a position to judge or shame or even give off that impression, right? Because the parents, it's just going to feel that way. No matter how good a parent you are, like it's just
Right.
gonna feel that way to a kid. So as a parent, being intentional about the other parents in your kid's life, knowing your kids' friends' parents, knowing their coaches, knowing their teachers, and knowing that the people that your kid is choosing to surround themselves with are people who share similar values and similar, outlooks on life, that they can pour into the kids those same values and just staying consistent. It's just as important now when they're teens and young adults as it was when they were babies and toddlers.
I like that. You gave a great explanation for that. One thing that stood out to me was you said that with the young adults, their brain hasn't developed to the point to where they can see long-term effects. And as parents, I'm not a parent, but from what you're saying, as a parent, looking at it from your perspective, it's not always the right thing to do because you're looking at someone who doesn't see it that way. And so that part of that disconnection comes from the expectation of thinking they should see it that way,
Mm-hmm.
when reality is they don't. And
Right.
I
And
like
that's
how
why
you,
asking
yeah,
questions is so important.
questions
Staying
is so
curious.
important. Staying curious and being, how do I say this? Uh, Being curious, but actually being curious with an open heart, not just why are you doing this or what's going on with
What
you.
were you
It's
thinking?
exactly that
That's
kind of
very, very confrontational.
interrogation, right? And
Right.
just really trying to get on their level of connection and partnership. And I think that's so important because, growing up as a child, our parents connected with us, my brother and I. And so we felt like there was a really good connection and there was this conversation. It wasn't so much of you did this wrong. It was like, well, what happened here? Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk to me a little bit more about that? And then we go into our explanation. So we never held anything from our parents. So when something was going on, we were quick to say, this is what I'm experiencing right now. I don't know what to do. What can I do about it? And so it really put
Yeah.
us into a position where we were able to navigate through challenges a lot better than most kids or peers our age.
Yeah.
But let's get on the subject here of, now we talked about parents, the solution, how they connect with their Gen Z. Now for the Gen Zs that are listening, they haven't dropped off already because they have a very short attention span. But if you're a parent, let's have your Gen Z listen to this part of it. So if you're a Gen Z and you want to have more fun with your life, take off the pressure, this fear of missing out on everything that they have right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to start living more openly and with passion, how do they start doing that despite the failure that will possibly happen and some of the letdown of life experiences? What can they start doing?
Yeah, a lot of it is mindset, and this may be new information for some young people, it may not be, because again, mental health is something we talk about. We talk about how we think about different things. I like to use the WTF acronym, the words, thoughts, feelings. If you choose
Okay.
certain words, whether you're talking to yourself or other people, that will influence the thoughts that you have and the feelings that result. So if you tell yourself that, well, I'm too anxious, I'm too overwhelmed, I'm too this, too that, to do a thing, and that may or may not be true, and it causes anxiety, I can't do that thing because I'm too whatever, then the action's not going to happen. There's going to be that sort of paralysis of like, I'm not going to move forward with this because it's just too scary, it's too intimidating, whatever it might be. If you start to tell yourself, well, I'm excited and I wonder how I could do the thing, it it lessens the pressure of like, well, I have to be a certain way. I have to be something that I don't think that I am in order to do whatever it is that I want to do. If you just relax and give yourself permission to try it, to explore it, to play with it, it becomes more manageable.
Mm.
So, an example might be we'll talk about martial arts later. So, let's use martial
Yes, we'll
arts,
get into that a little
right?
bit later. Yeah.
Oh, I could never do martial arts because I'm not that, I'm not an athletic person. So maybe they never step out and they never try a martial art, even though I think it's really, really valuable for most people. Maybe they say, well, I'm not athletic enough to start. And then they just convince themselves, even though like maybe their friends in martial arts and having a great time keeps inviting them. Oh, no, I'm not that way. I could never do that. Well, going in with a different perspective is, well, my friend's inviting me to try one class. Maybe I'll try one class because my friend will be there. I'll be excited to be with my friend. And, or even if it's something maybe your friends don't do, well, I really think it might be cool to learn a little bit of this self-defense because again, the culture we live in, it's a valuable skill. So for whatever reason, I think I might want to do it, but I'm scared. Well, I might want to do this and I'm scared and I can do it. And just letting go of having to not be scared to do something is important. It's one of these things where there's a level of trust that comes in. Okay, well this martial arts school has been doing this forever. They know what they're doing. I'm going to trust that they're going to teach me what I need to know, even if I know nothing, which again, most martial arts schools out there, we're meant to meet you where where you are, right? So it's all about the stories we tell ourselves in our own head. The feeling physiologically of fear and excitement, they're the
Mhm.
same. So if you tell yourself you're scared, you're going to be scared. If you tell yourself you're excited, you're going to be excited.
Mm.
In the body, they feel the same way. There's the rapid heartbeat. There's a little bit of maybe sweat, maybe some like flushing of the skin, like whatever it is. In the body, it's the same, whether you're scared or excited. And
Mm.
it comes to the mental discipline of just changing the language around it. It's like, oh, well, this is something I really want to do. I feel scared. Well, maybe I'm just excited. It all has to do with how you talk to yourself.
Powerful. I love that. The mindset perspective of it and how you're talking to yourself. Fear and excitement are the same emotions, just how which one you're deciding to listen to. And for the Gen Zs out here today, definitely there's a lot of fear going on around the world, and we get that. However, there's a lot of things that you can control. And this is just what Sarah said, your self-talk
Mm-hmm.
and trying out new things, sucking at it, as in your words, Sarah,
Right.
and having some fun, doing
Right.
that, and then learning from it. And is this what you mean by playing in your passions? Like when you're trying something out, you get it, you say, okay, I'm gonna get excited now. Let me go
Right.
on this. Let me see what I can do. I don't know what's gonna happen, but let's just dabble in it a little bit.
Yeah, that's the foundation of the work that I do is first we actually get clear what is it that you want? Because
Hmm.
most of us, even adults, we spend a lot of time reacting to what we don't want or trying to avoid what we don't want, that we don't actually give ourselves the space to breathe and actually check in with what we do want in our lives. So that is the first element of the work that we do is awareness around like what's going on and what would that ideal look like? What would living your passion look like? Most, sometimes kids, they say, well, I want to do this with my life. And yet, every time maybe an opportunity comes along, they're like, I'm not going to do that. Well, I don't feel like doing that. So it's like, why? Well, because it's important and there's fear around it and they don't want to suck at it because they have decided they want to do it. So that comes into play too, where again, if you realize that this is something you want, there's going to be times where it's not going to go perfectly and it's still going to be okay. Sometimes what we do is unpack the anxiety around a thing. I had a situation with a young lady who was moving into a dorm for a time and was terrified, so anxious about it.
It's a
We
new world.
talked and I was like, "Well, what are you actually afraid of?" And as we talked through the actual fear, well, I might get scammed or stolen from or whatever the thoughts that were coming up. We talked through it and okay, so what if that actually happens? What if you get scammed? What if you get stolen from? What'll happen? Well, I'll call my parents or I'll deal with the police or whatever, actually looking at it and seeing that these fears could actually be manageable. Like even if the worst case scenario happens, they can still get through it. It's just they spend a lot of time fighting the anxieties. Oh, I'm being silly. I'm judging, like they judge themselves. You judge yourself for having the crazy irrational fear that you have. But if you actually lean into it a little bit and say, well, what am I really afraid of? Well, what really would happen if that happened? Well, what if that happened? And giving yourself that, like, well, I could plan, or I know I have resources, or I know I have the tools to use to deal with that kind of situation. So it gives them back that sense of control.
Love it. Great answer. And there we go. We talked about the expectations, the fears, how to dive into the passion, regardless of what the outcome is going to be. And this has been absolutely a fantastic conversation around that. I can see why you are kicking butt out there and you're helping other people do the same.
I feel like we could talk a long, long time.
Yeah. So the question I'm going to ask you now is, what does living a purposeful life mean to you, Sarah, when it's all
Oh,
said and done?
for me, living a personal or purposeful life means that I can go into my passions. I am shining as my highest self. I'm deeply connected to myself and my family. I'm continually inspiring others to believe in themselves. I'm surrounded by excited, passionate, and purposeful people, and I'm thriving in a supportive and stimulating relationship. So, those are my top 5 passions. This is something I do with my clients. This is something I do. It's called the Passion Test. It's out there. There's a book. It's not mine, but I am a certified passion test facilitator. So, the passions for me point to that purpose. Living that purposeful life is having that feeling like when all those things are in place, like I feel like I'm my best and that I am here for and doing exactly what I've been put here to do. And it does involve, me working on myself and lifting up other people and showing them what's possible for them.
Wonderful answer. Sarah, it's been great to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Adrian. I love this conversation.
Okay, so now we're going to go a little bit deeper, Sarah, into this conversation about martial arts. Now, I know that you all were waiting for it, and we just had to wait a little bit longer to give this information. So, Sarah, what type of martial arts do you do?
It's karate.
It's karate? Okay, how long have you
Yeah.
been doing that for?
I've been in it about 5 years, I want to say. It's
Okay,
been
excellent.
maybe a little over 5 years. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely connected with you and I saw that. I was like, oh, fellow martial artist, I love it. I have to talk to you
Right.
about this. We can nerd out about it. So my martial arts is in Taekwondo.
Okay.
And so I've done that for, wow, since I was a teenager. I competed, I
Good.
taught. And so it's
Yeah.
played a major factor in my life on so many levels. What I want to ask you is, how did karate teach you about life, or has it taught you
So
some
much.
lessons?
So much. So my kids started maybe 8 or 9 years ago.
Hmm.
So my oldest started when he was like 6 or 7 years old. And then the middle one started a couple of years later. And then when the little one, I have 3 sons. So when the youngest one started, then I was able to join for free. So I
There we
started at
go.
the same time as him. So we've been a karate family, and my husband just recently started in December. So it's
Great.
family that kicks together, sticks together, right?
Hmm.
Um, but when my kids started, it was really cool because our school is very involved with teaching the life skills and the life lessons, even more like emphasis than the proper kicking technique or whatever, especially for the little ones when they first start. It is all about the values and the life skills. So the lessons that they were teaching these kids, and as I was watching the instructors teach my sons, the things they were saying kept coming up in my life. Like, we communicate openly, honestly, and intentionally. Or we respect tradition and embrace change, a couple of our values. We hold ourselves and each other accountable for our actions and attitude. Like, these are a couple of the values from our school that they would teach them and pour into these kids at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And as I'm sitting there watching every class, like soaking it all in, even from the sidelines, I'm going, "Oh, I'm not doing that. How can I do that better?" So
Mm.
you talk about life lessons. I'm in my, mid 30s and learning all these things from the kids or from the karate classes that I'm not even taking. So that was really cool. And if it wouldn't have been for all of that, I don't know if I ever would have started a business. I had a business before I was doing coaching. I don't know if I ever would have done some of the things in my life that I have done. So much less become a karate student myself and an instructor.
I love it. It's such a powerful way of growing as a person because I think this is my opinion that martial arts should be mandatory in schools because I think it would really resolve a lot of the issues with bullying,
Hmm.
also a lot of the issues with people feeling like they're less than because it
Right.
teaches so much more than just the physical. I'll never
Hmm.
forget this, Sarah, when I was really in my flow of training and I was on my way to getting a first degree black belt. I had everything. I had the physical ability to do things. I was quick. I was fast. I was kind of mean at times,
Hmm.
and I'll
Yeah, you
never
got to be
forget.
able to tap into that.
Yeah, I'll never forget though. I sometimes I was a little out of control, and I remember my instructor. He held me back for
Hmm.
about a year before getting my black belt,
Hmm.
and I couldn't understand why. And I said, "Well, what's going on?" I said, "I'm doing everything right. I know all the forms. I know the techniques. I've sparred. I've done this. I've volunteered." And he's like, "You're not getting what I'm trying to teach you here. This is not used to hurt people. This is
Hmm.
used to protect yourself, but more importantly, self-control. If
Yeah.
you can't control yourself on these mats, you can't control yourself out there." And he says, "Adrian, black belt is not around your waist necessarily. It's in your mind."
So
And
much.
so with that being said, I was a little ticked off.
I bet. I bet.
It's like, how dare you? I'm not coming to
Yeah.
school anymore. But
Yeah.
but I kept going back. And I
But what
realized
a
what he was telling
kind
me.
and loving thing for your instructor to do for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I was upset, but it really made me think twice about what I was in it for. Was I in it
Yeah.
just for the facade of having it? Or do I really want to embrace the lifestyle of it?
Right. And
And
that's,
that's what I learned.
yeah, long before I earned my black belt, I became a black belt. I was wearing a
Hmm.
blue belt or a red belt or whatever it was. And I was like,
Hmm.
I was teaching some warm-ups and leading some classes and stuff. And the kids were like,
That's what I did too. Yeah.
why aren't you a black belt? And I was like, I am a black belt. I'm just not wearing it yet. So again, it was
Hmm.
adopting that mindset early and saying, yeah, this is something I want. And why can't I already be it? If I can be it, then I'll achieve it, right? I'll get it eventually if I continue to show up that way. So
Yeah.
it's a mindset thing. And I was teaching my young achievers class, like 5 or 6 to 9 year olds the other day about the power of their voice. And
Hmm.
why do we yell? Why do we yell on the mats in
Key
here?
up. The key
Right? The
up.
key up. Yeah. Why do we use our voice so loud? And we were working on some self-defense, like the leave me alone, bringing the voice out. It's like,
Mhm.
if you can't bring your voice out here where everybody's doing it and we're telling you to be loud and you know, bring your full self out and that full energy, then you're never going to go out there and give your brilliant ideas to the world. You're never going to be able to stand up in front of a group of people and say, this is what I believe, or whatever it is that you need to contribute to the world. So it's about way more than just packing power into a punch or a kick with the key hop. It's about actually trusting that your voice is important and can move you forward in your life.
It's so important. You're right. And that's something that I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't talk about that. It's the voice behind that. The whole idea of the yelling, is getting that part of you out, getting out of that
the
bubble.
Adults are the worst with that.
Oh yeah, they're looking around at other adults like, it's like, no,
I'm the
no,
loudest in my adult class, I tell you.
You have to be, and when you're that way, you're considered crazy, right? They think that, there's what's going on with this person here. I don't want to spar with that person. They're like a little on edge. So
right.
But it's fun because
it has helped me bring my voice out in situations like this, where I'm like, hey, I actually have some things to say. I have things to, did I say it perfectly on your podcast? Probably not, but like, I know what I'm talking about.
You did great. I can actually see the confidence radiating from you.
And
it doesn't need to be perfect,
have a message, and my voice is important and it matters because people need to hear it. So
and I like that. And I think that's what we need for the Gen Z generation is to have that voice come out more, not in an aggressive way, but in a way of like, I need this. Can you help me with this?
Right.
And expressing in those ways, I think will resolve a lot of the key issues that are going on. But back to that martial arts, I believe that if we can find some way to get more of these kids involved in things like that, it doesn't have to be karate. If you're listening, it doesn't have to be taekwondo. It could be any type of martial arts or anything that revolves around an interest that you have. Because what we're looking at here, of what we're talking about today of martial arts, is structure. Right. That's where the big thing there is structure and discipline. It's coming to the class. It's being involved with a group of people, having to learn together, making mistakes like you talked about earlier, and having some fun with it, right? And that's what this is about.
I was at a event for one of my high school students, with one of these STEM events. It's like a Rube Goldberg type of thing where they had to build this machinery, and there was a theme. It was like a space theme. It was super cool. And these teams that they were standing out there and speaking to the adult judges, looking them in the eye, talking about the mistakes they made building the thing, talking about working together as a team, and just talking about their experience. It was like something like that, a STEM program or STEAM program in a school, a club or activity that, again, gives the structure, the discipline, the community, the collaboration, the confidence to speak to someone, look them in the eye and say, here's what I did, here's what I liked, here's what I did wrong, here's what I messed up, here's how I fixed it. Building that resilience, building that confidence is, again, it doesn't have to be martial arts. Martial arts is a great resource, a great opportunity for kids. But even things like that, club, activity group, something in STEM, something in music, something in even like socially playing like Dungeons and Dragons or something in your friend's basement. That's something that I used to do in high school as well. So like, again, it worked those same skills, the personal skills, the leadership skills, the creativity skills, all of those things.
Love it. So if you're a parent listening, then this is some more ideas for you to find a way to connect with your child, maybe even get in a class with them, and take martial arts with them and bond with them some kind of way. Figure out what kind of game they like, board games at home, or some kind of video game that you like that you can connect with them on, something to get them involved. And this has been a wonderful time, Sarah. I think that we could go on and talk, and I need to have you back on again for sure, because I love the conversation between us. And I just want to thank you for being you and showing up and helping people see that it is okay to suck at things, but still have fun and still to grow and still develop, and that adulting can be fun. And I really appreciate what you're bringing to the planet.
Thank you.